I'm going to talk to you about App Store optimization. I was already introduced, but briefly about myself before that. I'm Yonatan Dotan. I'm the VP of Inbound Marketing at Yellowhead. At Yellowhead, we're a digital marketing agency. We do SEO, PPC, social media, but also, of course, App Store optimization for major clients. We're lucky enough to have a lot of clients who are here at the conference. We're working with Zingo, with Playtika, with lots of others. And over the past year or so, we've seen developers really waking up to the importance of ASO, really starting to take it more seriously, which is great. But over that same time, we're still seeing people making the same mistakes they were making a year ago, making 2 years ago. So I want to talk about a few of the more common mistakes, a few bits of just general info, and also just some fun tips. There's a lot in this presentation, so I'm going to go relatively quickly. So I apologize for that, and bear with me. First, very quickly, just for those who aren't believers yet, what's all the fuss about? 63% of all users find applications through search. Despite that, 83% of all applications are virtually invisible in search. That means they cannot be found in keyword or category rankings unless you are searching directly for them. Third, there are over 3 million applications on Google Play and iOS alone. Last time I did this presentation, which was not that long ago, it was over 2 million, and that's because there are something like 5,000 new applications being submitted every single day. With all that, again, very, very briefly, what does ASO have to do with it? In a sentence, ASO is SEO for applications. It's about search optimization, making sure that your application gets found, and conversion optimization, making sure that once people find your application, they actually want to install it. Unlike SEO, results are fast and results are dramatic. Changes in texts lead to almost instant changes in keyword rankings, which coupled with increases in conversion optimization, conversion rate, lead to very quick gains in installs, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So I'm going to jump right into search optimization, making sure that your application gets found. I'm going to talk about Google Play and iOS because those are obviously still the two most dominant stores. Briefly before I jump right in, something to remember about the stores, they come from very, very different backgrounds. Google comes from a background of search. They know how to look at your application, what you wrote, what's in your reviews, who's using your application, what they're saying, and they kind of can figure out what you're about, though you still need to help them. Apple, on the other hand, comes from the world of music, where a title might have, or a title might have a song, might have a title, an artist, an album name, and maybe a genre, and that's about it. So Apple comes very much more from the direction of you have to spoon feed it, you have to tell it what you are about. So moving right ahead, the first thing that I'm going to talk about is titles. Titles in iOS and Google Play are crucial. Having important keywords in your title is crucial. That in itself is not groundbreaking, but I'm going to give you a little bit of an example of just how much. Take a look at this picture on the right. These are the top ranking applications for the keyword camera effects. This application in third place, Candy Camera for Selfie, has an over 4-star rating, over 1 million reviews, and is frequently updated. Despite that, it is being outranked by these two applications, which both have under 4 stars, either a 10th or a 50th of the number of reviews, and one of them hasn't been updated in over a year. And it's quite simply because they have camera effects in their title. Now, we get pushback sometimes from developers who say, my title's my brand name. I don't want to change that just for ASO, just to add a few keywords or something like that. So a few points about that. First of all, this is something that brands have been doing forever. Consider SEO, consider meta titles. It's something that's been going on for years. Second of all, it's really not unreasonable to put in a few keywords to describe your application, particularly if you're not something that's extremely straightforward. And finally, just consider the alternative. Take a look at these rankings. These are the top 10 rankings for the keyword camera and for the keyword pictures in iOS and Google Play. Take a look for a brief second and see if you notice anything strange. Quite simply, where are Snapchat and Instagram? Arguably the biggest applications that have anything to do with this in the world are not in the top 10 for pictures or for camera. Now, you can say, Snapchat and Instagram don't really need any help. They're doing all right. But second of all, acquisition is acquisition. Why not add another channel? Second of all, these are major keywords. And third of all, would it really be so unreasonable for Instagram's title to be something like Instagram, share pictures with friends? Moving right ahead, I'm going to go into keyword lists for iOS. This is another big one. The main concept that people miss out on here is mixing and matching. Apple knows how to mix between your keywords, mix between keywords in your titles and keywords in your keyword list. And so I'll go through a brief example of some of the major mistakes that we still see people making. So we're going to go through a fake application here with the title slots, WoW casino games, Vegas slot machines. This is an example of a bad keyword list. It doesn't use the full 100 characters. It has spaces between keywords. It has repetitive words in the keyword list and title, which is one that we see surprisingly often. A developer will say, slots is my main keyword. I don't want to take it out of my keyword list. If you have it in your title, the title is stronger, it does more, and it's quite simply not needed and a waste of space. There are non-search relevant keywords, which is one we see a lot as well, and we worked with an application that had to do with battling dragons, and they had keywords in there like fire and eggs and scales, and those are things that are maybe related, but they're not things that anybody is searching for, so they're not helping you in a practical way. Singulars and plurals, iTunes in a very basic sense knows how to change plural to singular and singular to plural and so forth. I'm going to skip ahead here because, again, lots to get through. This is an example of a little bit of a better list. It uses 99 out of the total 100 characters. It uses a mix and match. So you'll see the first keyword is loss, and there's the word Vegas in the title, so this app can now be ranked on Las Vegas. You have to remember that Apple needs spoon feeding. If the word loss wasn't in here, this application could not be found for the term Las Vegas. It targets long tails, it targets competitors, and a nice little other tip is it uses hyphenated keywords. You can see there it has free hyphen sell. That gets you free sell is one word, free sell is two words, and also sell free, though that's not relevant here. Oh, and free and sell. Okay, moving ahead, I'm going to talk about Google Play description. So Google Play descriptions, Google Play in general, is something very different. You only have 30 characters in your title, and then you have your description. It's a little bit more nuanced playing around with it, but one thing that you can do in Google Play, which you absolutely cannot do in Apple, is you can do a great job targeting long tails. Take a look at these excerpts of the description of Real Racing 3. It's a nicely written description, but hidden in there are basically laundry lists of keywords. Meticulously detailed cars from manufacturers like Ferrari, Porsche, Chevrolet, Lamborghini, Mercedes-Benz, Bugatti, Audi, Ford, so forth and so forth and so forth. Now, is having something like this going to get you ranked first for the keyword Ferrari? Absolutely not. But this application is ranked for dozens and hundreds of keywords: Aston Martin racing, Ferrari racing game, all kinds of things like these, which are lower competition. They're lower searches, but in aggregate, they make a significant difference. Moving on to conversion optimization, getting people to actually install your application. So the most important thing there is when we're talking about conversion optimization here, for the most part, we're talking about graphics, icons, screenshots, featured graphics, and so forth. The thing that we found that helps the most, more than anything else, is simply making graphics that stand out. Obviously, your graphics should look good and they should convey your point, but more than that, you want them to stand out from the crowd. So, for example, on the left, Tiny Beans, an application we worked with, if you don't have a video and you have vertical screenshots, then you can, for example, use both of your screenshots together to create a sort of a banner, which tends to stand out more than others. On the other side, you have some of the rankings, or some of the ranking applications for the keyword keyboard. If you take a look there, all of them kind of do the same thing. They're square, they have keyboards on them, a lot of colors. And then you have Flexi, which I'm not even saying is a particularly nice looking icon, but when it's just a circle with plain colors, it stands out to the eye among everything else. In addition, go through this really quickly. This is from our friends at Store Maven. They have a nice little a statistic that they found through their A/B testing tool. Visitors to app pages largely split into two groups: instant decision makers and explorers, and it's about a 50-50% split. When an instant decision maker comes to your page, they look for a few seconds and they decide whether or not to install or to ditch. So for those kinds of players, your icon, impactful screenshots, big text that doesn't take a long time to read are very important. The other 50% are explorers. They're going to go through and they're going to read your short description. Maybe they'll be in the 1% that actually click read more on a description. They'll flick through your image, through your screenshots a little bit. And those other parts are sort of for them. One of the great things that has happened in ASO in the past several months is that Google released their A/B testing tool, Google Experiments, and this has allowed us to really stop guessing what we think works and stop trying to see what works through all kinds of strange calculations, but to really start testing. So I'm going to run you through a few things about that. This is an A/B test we ran for Black Diamond Casino, a Rising Tide Games slots title. Fantastic application. The company was just purchased by Zynga. We tested these three, the right-hand three icons versus the control on the left. And after only a few days, we found that the third icon worked something like 20% better. So this was really a few hours of work and resulted in a 20% increase for them. Now let's talk about a little bit of the methodology. What we like to do here is we like to test things as much as we can separately. So for example, you'll see we change the picture in each one of the icons, but in every single one, the word is casino. After that, we take the winning icon, we tested it once with casino, once with slots, once with 777, once with other things like that to see where we can get to in the best way. In addition to that, another thing about the methodology there, what we generally do is we start globally. You can test either in the whole world in Google Experiments, or you can test region by region. So we start globally, and we get to the point where we're finding it very difficult to get significant further gains. And after that, we start working country by country. Maybe certain colors work better in France. Maybe certain characters work better in Brazil. And also in Apple. So Apple doesn't have an A/B testing platform, but App Analytics has allowed us to become a lot more accurate in the things we're doing. Using App Analytics, you can get to sort of basic calculations of conversion rate. And while it's hard to do exactly something like A/B testing, if your graphics are working, if the graphics that you've changed to work significantly better than the previous ones, it's pretty easy still to notice a difference. Okay, so some very basic things, very general, very, very general, and not always guaranteed to work. Things that we found that work in icons are eyes, having big eyes in them catches the attention, breaking the box, making something like a small border and having central character break out of them, which mostly other applications aren't doing, so it looks differentiated. Intellectual property is great, but it's not necessarily a silver bullet. If you'll remember from what I showed you 2 slides ago, the icon with John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John worked 20% better than the control, but the icon with only John Travolta actually worked about 10% worse. Text is great. It's amazing how much of a difference it can make to add a little banner to your existing icon that says new or friends or fresh or something like that. But most of all, and this is coming back to that same point, icons that work are icons that are differentiated. So one example of a place where this doesn't happen at all is in the world of email. This is 8 of, I think, the top 12 email applications, and they all have exactly the same icon. They're relatively flat, blue envelopes. Now, when you add one thing with even just a little change, just a little color, suddenly it becomes the only thing that your eye is drawn to. Okay, moving right along, I'm going to talk about localization taking over the world. So this is something that has been talked about a lot in this conference and in other conferences. The US is obviously an enormous, lucrative market and all of that, but today it's still a certain percentage of the world, and there's a lot more out there. So when we're talking about localization, we're talking about localization of your App Store page, not necessarily your app, though if you have the resources for that, obviously it's great. And so when we talk about localization, we're talking about, I'll give an example from a different field. So this is McDonald's. It's one of their meals in Middle Eastern countries. They went for different colors, a mikarabia, a little bit of a different type of food. And then on the other hand, you get translation, which is something very different. Again, with the joke aside, when we talk about localization, we're really not talking about translating. We're really not talking about even translating well. When we do localization for applications, we work in 25 different languages, and what we start with is actual keyword research in every single one of those languages. We look through and find what people in those countries are searching for most, and then we translate well based on that keyword research. So just a quick example of that. This is LogDog. It's a great application that we've worked with. What they do is basically they detect when people who are not you have logged into your accounts. And what you can see here is if you look at the titles are translated, obviously, but they also have slightly different meanings in every language. In English, it's stop hacker intrusion. In German, it's protection from hackers. And in Italian, it's anti-hacker attacks. These things were chosen even though they're a little bit different than their main message each time because, again, that's what people are searching for. And so the point isn't even that they got ranked, it's that they got ranked for the terms that are major in those languages. In addition, localization of graphics is something that helps a lot with conversion rate in foreign regions. On the one hand, you can go for real simple, just straight up swapping out of your English text for localized text. And on the other hand, you can also go for a completely new design, 365 Sports with their icon. In different countries, they changed it to reflect the most popular local sport and the local colors. And in the end, what it all comes down to. So in the end, this all goes to increase installs. Generally, applications that we work with are already somewhat optimized in English. We go through and we make changes there, and it's not uncommon to see a 30% increase, a 40% increase. Of course, there are cases where you see hundreds of percent increases, but realistically, this is more typical. Now, what you'll notice, or it's difficult to see there, but this is an increase of 30% based off of a base of 2,000 installs per day. On the lower image, what you see is the install increase in Germany, which was at a base of about 100 a day and increased by about 200%. And that's totally not atypical to see in foreign languages in ASO. And the thing to remember here is that this is what happened in Germany, but this also happened in like 20 other countries. So in the end, while yes, the increase in the US is great, often what you see with localization is enormous. In addition, organic traffic today is starting to become demystified, whereas before we had pure baseline analysis and all kinds of things and subtract out paid acquisition. In Google Play, for instance, now you can actually already see exactly how many installs you've gotten from Play Store organic. And what we've seen from looking at this is really for 99% of the applications, the majority of traffic actually does come from organic. So we've talked about a bunch of things. There are a whole bunch of other factors that have to do with ASO. Your retention and usage and all kinds of things that are maybe a little bit harder to play with. But one of the other things which is huge is ratings and reviews. And so I'll walk through an example just to show you how much of an effect this has. I'm going to walk through an example by a slots app which shall remain unnamed, which we don't work with. But at some point in time, this app sent its users this prompt: rate us 5 stars, give 500 free chips. Great, but no, you will lose chips. Now, so they don't actually have a way to know this. They have no way to see this, but users don't know that. So the effect that it had on users was huge. This is an app that went from having one positive or a handful of positive and a handful of negative reviews every day to having hundreds of positive reviews with still only a handful of negative reviews. And the effect was huge. This is a slots application that went from being ranked on, you don't see the scale there, but it's in the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds for words like poker to suddenly being ranked 9th overnight. So ratings and reviews is something that you need to pay attention to. Do it yourself. If you can't do it yourself, use an SDK like Apptentive, something like that. It's something that's worth paying attention to. Okay. Beyond that, there's a whole bunch of tips for Google Play, for iOS. I don't think that I actually have time to go through them all properly, but talk to us and I will send you the presentation. In summary, a few points. One, do ASO. There's not too much to elaborate here. Get on board. 2, localize your app pages. The world is a huge place, and it's a place that's worth paying attention to. 3, constantly pay attention. This makes or breaks an app. Really, again, for the majority of applications, the majority of installs are organic. It's something you need to pay attention to, and it's something that changes over time. It's not a do it once and forget kind of thing. And 4th, which is a little bit contrary to all those other points, is that ASO is not a silver bullet. It is important. It's not only important, it's crucial. It's something that you must do, but it's only part of the equation. ASO can help significantly increase what you have, but on its own, ASO, in the short term at least, is not going to take you from having 5 installs per day to having 20,000. And that is that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, are there no rules for incentivizing a positive install? I mean, positive review?
So you're asking what rules there are for incentivization? Honestly, I'm not totally sure. I don't know exactly what Apple's guidelines are. I actually don't even know that that's explicitly not allowed, but I'm guessing it's the kind of thing that if Apple caught on to, they would not be very happy with. We've seen a lot of things that work with the reviews. We've seen native prompting works well instead of sending the Apple prompt. As far as what exactly is allowed, I'm not sure.
About the text you use in the update, because each time you make an update on your app, you have the possibility to add a text. Mm-hmm. There are people that just say, thanks for playing. Some people that go really into details. Do you have recommendations?
You're talking about the what's new text?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So that's a good point. It's something that we very much recommend that you put some thought into. First of all, in Google Play, Google does actually look at keywords and at texts that are in there. And second of all, it's something that just users love seeing. There's nothing worse than what's new bug fixes. People like seeing that you added things and you made the audio better and there are new characters and new rooms and new whatever. So it's great also from a conversion perspective. People see that you're working on it, and then yes, it also helps as far as search goes.
About the rating, some people left comment, and you have the possibility to answer to that. Do you have recommendations? Should we just go into try to really answer the question there, or just forward with an email address?
So I mean, improving your reviews is a whole methodology on its own, inside the app, outside the app. There's a lot to think about as far as that goes. If you are getting a reasonable amount of negative reviews within all of your positive reviews, then I very much recommend answering in person. It looks better than just saying, hey, sorry, you sent something to this email. It shows other people that are looking at the application that you're paying attention, that you're really working with the users. And again, in Google Play, Google looks at text and reviews as well, so it can't hurt there either. Sure.
So suppose you're in the 83% that don't do any of this, and you're looking to get started. Is this hire a full-time team? Is there a bang for the buck with 5 hours a week? How do you get started on this?
So that's another good question. And the bottom line is kind of you need to get started on it regardless of what level of resource you have. And then there it really just goes based on your resources. If you have the resources, based on whatever you think is right, bring someone in-house, use an agency, and go with something like that. If you don't have the resources, if you don't have the time, then just find an hour, find 2 hours, start looking at keywords a little bit, put something in there. There are nice tools you can look at, Sensor Tower, things like that, which have, if I'm not mistaken, free plans as well. You can go, as simple as just log into the Google Keyword Planner, try and look a little bit at what the keywords are, and start putting things in and do a little bit at a time. Anything at all is better than nothing. But again, if you have the resources, then we're seeing more and more people, obviously either going with agencies or really bringing people in-house to work on titles.
Okay. So if there are no other questions, let's thank Yonatan. And
Thanks a lot.